when there are people within the church saying, look, we need to catch up to societal norms, we need to become more 21st century, then they're forgetting what their job is. And the other people, the actual Christians, who are saying, well, no, because Christ is countercultural, his gospel is countercultural, therefore we shouldn't be trying to be the culture, we should be in and around the culture and showing people the light of Christ in this ever-darkening world around them and offering an alternative to the culture.
Moikka ja tervetuloa Kujalla podcastiin. Tänään puhutaan englannista ja kuinka woke englanti oikeastaan on ja kuinka woke englannin anglikaanikirkko on. Tänään minulla on vieraana pastori ja poliittinen kommentaattori Calvin Robinson. Thank you so much, Calvin, for being here with us today.
No, not at all. I don't speak Finnish, but I understood most of that. Woke, England, Anglican, yeah.
Pastor.
That sums it up.
Yeah. So you have kind of become known in the last couple of years as a political commentator and about your journey with the Anglican Church and all those things. Did you choose to become very active, in social media and doing a television show, or kind of did all these things kind of like unfold as you started to speak up?
That's a very good question. I didn't choose any of this, which is the surprising fact about it, because one of the insults that my political opponents often throw at me is grifter. And actually, I earn far less money doing what I do now. It's far less enjoyable most of the time, but I do it because it's what I'm called to do. It's what I strongly feel called to do. I spend half my time in parish ministry and half my time in public ministry on television and in broadcast media. And none of it is an ambition. It is all a calling from God.
Right. Well, in the news, like if we follow maybe social media news and like the Christian news from the UK, it sounds like there many or the culture, the British culture has moved very far from its Christian roots. For example, there was a lady near an abortion clinic. She was praying silently and she got arrested for her silent prayers. There was a chaplain by the name of Bernard Randall who preached kind of a very mild sermon about, being open to different views about LGBTQ ideology, and he lost his job and he had to go to court and all these things. But he was also added to the country's terrorist list. And then there is a politician, Kate Forbes, who is a Protestant Christian and who affirms Christian views of marriage, and now she's being kind of blacklisted from running for the leadership of SNP in Scotland because of her Christian views. Like, can you kind of like give us an overall, like, is it really this bad as it kind of sounds, or what's going on in the UK?
It's atrocious. It really is this bad, yes. Some of the things you mentioned. So Isabel Vaughan Spruce, very, very lovely lady, very good Christian woman, is the person that you mentioned to start with, that got arrested for silently praying in her head. Now, the government in this country have implemented these buffer zones, which local governments can put in place around, or so-called around abortion clinics, but they extend far further than the actual clinic. The idea being that women going to abortion centres are, not clinics, they're centres, are vulnerable, which is obviously the case. However, the legislation was supposed to prevent harassment. Like, we don't really have harassment in this country. People could argue that it has happened in the past in other countries, such as America, but we haven't really had it over here. All we do have is people praying, people that are concerned for the mothers and for the babies, people sometimes offering literature of alternative options, like alternative options to death, to killing, which should be seen as a good thing. But even if it's not harassment. But this legislation prevents not just the handing out of literature, not just protests, peaceful or otherwise, but it prevents prayer, which means that if you are in the vicinity of one of these centres, it doesn't matter what you're doing there. If you see a hearse drive past and you do the sign of the cross, because that's what you do when you see a hearse, or you bow your head in prayer, you could be arrested just as Isabel Vaughan Spruce was, just as a couple of other people have been since. Father Sean recently spoke about his testimony as well, where he wasn't even praying for anything to do with abortion. He was praying for free speech. He also got arrested. People are being arrested for prayer. We're supposed to have freedom of worship as well as freedom of expression and, well, freedom of thought, but we don't seem to have that really and truly in this country anymore. And it is getting worse and worse. And some of the other things you mentioned are very prevalent. You know, Kate Forbes, I don't support her politics. I shouldn't have to say that, but I don't support her politics. However, I fully support and would die for her right to freedom of worship. And she is a Christian, and she's expressed that she's a Christian, has Christian views, quite ordinary Christian views on sexuality and marriage and gender and all of these things. Orthodox views, I would suggest. And she has been ostracized because of it. I think there's still a chance she could become leader of the SNP, the Scottish National Party. However, the mainstream media are trying everything they can to prevent that, as are her political opponents. And it's horrible to see it happen. In a Christian country, the United Kingdom still is a Christian country. Why are Christians denigrated so much? And in answer to your primary question, is it really as bad as it seems? Well, yes, because the church in Scotland has already gone apostate. The church in Wales has already gone apostate. And now the Church of England has gone apostate too and has been renounced by the wider Anglican communion and is now in impaired communion with 80% of worldwide Anglicans. It's very, very sad that this is happening. But it's because the church no longer believes, well, I'll just leave it there really. The church no longer seems to believe. For me, it comes down to a matter of authority. As an Anglican, we believe that the Bible is authoritative. We believe that Anglican formularies of the ordinal, of the Book of Common Prayer, of the Book of Homilies, they are authoritative in our faith. And without them, when churches like the Church in Scotland, Church in Wales, and the Church of England no longer believe in the authority of Scripture, I don't know what we are, what's left of us other than a social club. And it seems that that's what it is to a lot of people, especially liberal people. It's a club, and it's no longer about Christ.
Well, yeah. Well, you just mentioned that the Church of England has also gone apostate. And are you referring now to basically the decision that the General Synod just recently made that they will allow their priests to bless same-sex marriages?
Yeah, it's astonishing, isn't it? Because I mean, that's an oxymoron. Same-sex marriage. There's no such thing. Marriage is between one man and one woman. It's heterosexual and it's monogamous, and that's rooted in Scripture. That's rooted in the Book of Common Prayer. It's rooted in the Catechism of the Catholic Church. That's just what marriage is. Now, in the secular world, people can call marriage whatever they like if they want to, and in this country, we do have same-sex marriage under secular law now, which I mean, I don't see a point in it because there was already civil marriage and civil partnerships and all of that. But now there's gay marriage within the secular state. However, within the church, it's not possible. Of course, it's not possible because Christian teaching is that marriage is one man and one woman. But what the Church of England has done is created a loophole and said, well, if you get married, if you have a homosexual marriage outside of the church, a state's marriage, then come into the church and we'll bless your union. It's like, well, first of all, that's not a union, not in the eyes of God. And God doesn't bless sin. So you can't ask God to bless something that he has deemed sinful. And that's creating more sin. And that is literally apostasy. It's heresy that the Church of England is preaching now. I don't know how they've gotten to that point. Well, I do. It's very sad.
Well, what has the reaction been among Christians? I mean, there are different types of Christians in the UK as well. So, I mean, has this deepened the division maybe between conservative and liberal Christians, or what's the scene like?
Yeah, I think it has, but I wouldn't say conservative versus liberal. I'd say Christians versus apostates or the social club members, because to be these liberal Christians or these progressive Christians are like trans men and trans women. The word progressive just means pretend, really, just as the word trans does. They're not really Christians if they don't believe in Christ and his teachings. I don't know how they can identify as Christians. But yes, it has deepened the divide, because when there are people within the church saying, look, we need to catch up to societal norms, we need to become more 21st century then they're forgetting what their job is. And the other people, the actual Christians, who are saying, well, no, because Christ is countercultural, his gospel is countercultural. Therefore, we shouldn't be trying to be the culture. We should be in and around the culture and showing people the light of Christ in this ever darkening world around them and offering an alternative to the culture. And those people are lost now because the church has left them. The church has moved away from Christ and from his teachings and from his people. So I don't know what's going to happen next, actually, for a lot of Christians within the Church of England. It's a great shame.
Mm. Well, do you think there might be like a split between within the Anglican Church, or what's the future like?
Well, in America, this happened. They promoted a openly practicing homosexual priest to the episcopacy. In Gene Robinson, there was practicing homosexual bishop, and that created a split in the church, which eventually led to the ACNA, which has become the Orthodox Church of Anglicanism in North America. And we've got similar situations in Australia and in Canada. So maybe we'll see something like that over here, although it's very difficult and very different circumstances, because we have the Church of England as an established church, and we don't see, nowhere else really. Not many other countries have established churches in the way that we do, in that it's essentially part of our legislative, it's part of our jurisdiction of our monarchy, our head of state. It's just embedded in every part of our culture and our society, our Church of England. So I don't know how they'd separate the two, but unless we had some kind of disestablishment. But the GAFCON movement, which came from the Jerusalem Declaration, which formed ACNA and such, it does exist over here. In fact, I'm a part of a church that is part of the GAFCON body, which is Orthodox and Anglican. So maybe more people will join that as a lifeboat as they see the Church of England leaving them behind. But I'm not entirely sure what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm. Well, okay, so the Anglican Church, or Church of England, is now affirming same-sex marriages, but they're also considering, or in the process of changing wording in prayers, and kind of like moving away from God the Father, as I understand. And what's kind of like, is in many ways they're trying to create a gender neutral language for church.
Create a gender neutral God, which again is probably well intentioned, but it's just a massive mistake, because God is gender neutral. God is beyond gender. God doesn't have a gender. However, God did tell us his preferred pronouns, and he did tell us how to address him for his reasons. And sometimes we understand those reasons, sometimes we don't. But when God told us to call him our Father, there's a purpose behind that, because our relationship to him is like that of a child and a father. And when God came to earth as man incarnate, he came as a man for a reason, just as he chose 12 male apostles for a reason. Now, that's not to suggest that women are less than men or anything like that, but God has his purposes and his reasons for everything that he does. It's all part of his design. So I don't know who the Church of England thinks it is to undermine God's plan and to kind of have the arrogance to reword the Lord's Prayer, which is the most powerful, most important prayer in Christianity, because God himself taught it to us.
Exactly. Well, you have a personal experience with the Church of England. You were kind of in the process of becoming a priest or pastor in the Church of England, but then it didn't exactly go as anticipated. So could you tell us briefly, like, what happened?
Yeah, sure. I was called to ordained ministry, and I affirmed that calling in the Church of England. And I went through the training process, I completed it, and then I was supposed to be assigned a parish, and it never actually formalized, and time kept going by and nothing was happening. So I tried to converse with my bishops, and it turned out that the Bishop of London and one of her underlings, the Bishop of Edmonton, really took an issue with my politics and my theology, because I am conservative in both politics and theology. For example, I don't believe in the ordination of women, and of course the Bishop of London at the moment is a woman. I don't believe so that's my theology, being conservative. And on the political side, I don't believe that the Church of England is institutionally racist. I think it's institutionally woke. I won't say it's institutionally racist, but they suggested that it is, and that I'm wrong. And I love it, because it's one of these situations where I have two very upper middle class white bishops telling me, the ethnic minority ordinand, that I'm wrong on issues of race, but their own racial perspective is one of critical race theory, where they're supposed to be listening to more minority voices. But of course, they don't listen to my voice, which is a minority voice, because it's the wrong minority voice. None of it makes any sense. Their own argument is undermined by their own actions. But essentially, we parted ways, and I decided to leave the Church of England. But I still felt called to ordained ministry, and thankfully, the ACNA in North America introduced me to and the REC in North America introduced me to the UK branch of the REC, the Reformed Episcopal Church, which I'm now a part of under the GAFCON umbrella.
Right.
So I got ordained a deacon,
Yeah.
and I'm in a parish now.
So how is that going? How are you liking your job as a pastor?
It's wonderful. It really is. It's the most humbling experience, being able to serve Christ, but also serve his people. And that's what the vocation is all about, really and truly.
Great. Well, you're also a political commentator, and you have your own program on, is it GB News on Sundays? So how do you think politics and religion mix? Because many people find that, that they should never be mixed.
Yeah. A lot of people say keep the church out of politics or keep faith out of politics. But I think it's a bit of a misnomer, because the faith is political. The Christian faith is very, very political. It's telling you how to live your life, how to live a good life, how to live a holy life. And it comes with a set of instructions. The commandments are things that we should be following. But also British law, or English law rather, is rooted in the Ten Commandments. Common law, it was founded on the principles of the commandments of, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not kill, etc. And it's where we get our moral compass from. So of course we should be political as a faith. However, I think what people take issues with is when the church is party political, because that's the mistake that the church often makes. The Archbishop of Canterbury and some of the bishops are often talking down conservative government policy, which I don't think is the appropriate approach. For example, there was a scheme to deport illegal immigrants to Rwanda, and they said it was ungodly. And I think that's a step too far. That's quite, saying that because they are anti-conservative. And we saw the same with Brexit as well, when the British public voted to leave the European Union because they believe in the sovereignty of the nation, which is a very Christian thing. The bishops were arguing in favor of remaining, and so once again suggesting that the Christian thing to do would be to go along with their politics. And I think that is the mistake that the church often makes. Where it should be talking is on issues of the sanctity of life, against the killing of unborn babies, or protecting the elderly and vulnerable from assisted suicide. And those kinds of things are what the church should be talking about in the political square.
So you have participated in demonstrations, and you have been interviewing people on the streets, and you were even in Davos for the World Economic Forum in January, trying to interview people who were participating there. So how do people kind of receive you as a pastor, wearing the pastoral outfit and everything, and then kind of like obviously being a political kind of activist even on the streets?
Oh, interesting question. I suppose it depends who and where. So when I go to pro-life rallies, I'm often received by many, many Christians. So I'm always in good company at those things. In Davos, I didn't wear my dog collar, actually. But the reception in Davos was interesting, because I don't think the political elite there are expecting any challenge at all. I don't think they expected any journalists, and I don't identify as a journalist, but I was there asking them questions, and they're not used to that kind of thing. They're only used to being asked questions that they already know the answers to, and or by people that are friendly to them, by media companies that are aligned with them. So I think they found it quite uncomfortable. But generally speaking, out and about, I do wear my clericals because I think it's an important witness to Christ. And I've had actually a few times people have gotten in touch with me either there and then or afterwards. I've received emails and people have said, things like, and I'll generalize here because I don't want to use anyone's specific example, but people have been having tough times in their lives, or just a bad day, or more specific, something horrible has been going on, and they've sat on the tube opposite me, or they've seen me somewhere, and it's not me that they notice, it's my dog collar, which reminds them of Christ and reminds them that he is with them in their suffering, and it's made their lives that bit better. And I think that's so important, because being an ordained minister, it's not about you. It is about in persona Christi, and it's always about him, serving him. And so if wearing this detaches people from me and reminds them of him, then that's the importance, and that's one of the reasons I will always wear it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think for us Christians in Western countries right now, we can feel very depressing to kind of see the development of issues that are not we don't see in a very, very good light, that we feel like our culture is kind of crumbling from within. We don't even know what a woman is, what a man is, and so forth. So do you think it actually is really important, or really like even kind of mandatory for Christians and even for Christian leaders or pastors to be active, kind of lead the opposition to all these ungodly legislations and so forth?
Absolutely. As Christians, we need to be stronger, more vocal. We need to be masculine in our faith and affirm it loud from the mountaintops, and not be shy or embarrassed. And we've done that for far too long. We've let society crumble around us. Right now, it feels like the fall of Rome, but it's not quite yet. We are at a crossroads, and we have a choice in Western society whether it totally degenerates and crumbles away, or we refind our Christian roots, which is what Western society was built upon, and refound Christendom. But it's on us to do that. And if we leave it all to the liberals who want to take over, they will win, because they want to win. So we have to want to win too, which means we have to fight back. And I know that's scary language to use, but that's what we have to do. And many Christians will say, yes, but, we're supposed to be in the world and not of the world, or, render unto Caesar. Yeah, absolutely. There is an element of that. However, we are called to bring in his kingdom and to help him bring in his kingdom in. We're not called to just sit on the wayside and let the world crumble around us. We are called to disciple the nations. That is, one of his great commandments. So we have to do something. We have to live in the world, even though we're not of the world.
Well, do you think we can make a difference? Do you think it matters? Like if we, speak up and, try to fight, or is this a losing battle?
Oh, no, of course we can make a difference. We've already won. The war has been won. So even if we do lose this battle, we know in the end, Christ has already won for us. Right? The devil has been defeated. All we're seeing right now is the devil going down, kicking and screaming. So we can help. We can make a difference. Every single voice has to stand up and shout louder, because that's all that's happening right now, is that the minority of the woke, liberal, progressives, whatever you want to call them, it doesn't matter. They are shouting louder than we are. So the politicians and the media are going along with what they've got to say. If we stand up and shout even louder with our wholesome Christian values, and drown out the degenerate nonsense that's being pushed by the wokies, then we win society back.
I was just thinking, like, how can we encourage our pastors? Because many times pastors can feel like, well, it's a sacrifice. You lose your face, or you lose your job, or you lose your reputation, or you lose your paycheck, Like, what kind of word of encouragement would you have about that? How much should we be willing to risk for the sake of speaking up?
I'm trying to find a more charitable way to articulate this at the moment, because I'm facing this with a lot of people that I know, a lot of friends actually, that are in the Church of England, for example, and see it as apostate and see it as no longer being Christian in a lot of ways, but still stay. And they say, because, my parish, the beautiful church, my stipend, I can't do without it. My kids are in the school. My wife doesn't want us to leave. These are all very noble excuses. Reasons, not excuses. They all make sense to me. However, we're called to be martyrs. We're not called to live an easy life. We're not called to do what's best for us or for our children or for our wives or for our parents. We're called to hate them, not in the literal sense, but as in we're called to put God first. That's what that commandment means. And that means that we have to sacrifice sometimes. we have to sacrifice the stipend. We have to sacrifice the nice school, the nice church, the prestige that comes with the role. We sacrifice it for Christ. If we truly believe, if we truly worship him and serve him, then we should be able to put everything else aside for him. And that's what pastors are called to do right now. And I don't think a lot of them are doing it because it is difficult, but we are supposed to pick up our cross. So I do want to be a bit of a challenge to them in that, but at the same time, I'm trying to find a more charitable way of saying it. I haven't come up with it yet.
Maybe it is kind of a pretty difficult decision, so maybe there is no really easy way to say it or soft way to say it that would also be meaningful. Well, thank you so much, Calvin Robinson, for being with us today. And where can people find you if they want to hear more of your thoughts or what you're doing in England?
Thank you, Heidi. It was an absolute pleasure to come on here. People can find me, just type in Calvin Robinson, whatever social media platform you use, I'm probably on there. I don't like to advertise them because, you know, Twitter's my biggest one, but I could be blocked from Twitter or banned from Twitter tomorrow for all I know. You never know how these things are going to work out. I have a website, calvinrobinson.com, where there's a link to most of my socials on there, and my Substack as well. My Substack's on there if people want to follow that. But at the moment, I'm on GB News on Sundays at 3 p.m. GMT. But that's also on YouTube if you're not in England. And I think my time on the schedule might be changing soon anyway. But yeah, just type my name in. And my DMs are always open on everything as well if people want to get in touch. So thank you and God bless.
Kiitos kaikille kuulijoille ja katselijoille myöskin. Ja jatkamme sitten ensi kerralla uusin aiheen ja palautetta voi lähettää osoitteeseen kujalla.podcast@gmail.com. Kiitos ja moi moi!